Hello to all. This is Dr. Gary Huber, and I have a great story to tell you this morning. I want to talk with you about a friend and patient of mine, Mick, and I want to give you his story. His story is about cancer, but there's a lot of information about Mick's journey that I think you'll find useful, not just if you have cancer, but in your general health. And that's what this video is really about. I want to talk not about how we treat cancer, but how do you prevent cancer? Because that's really the key. And the story starts with your immune system. You have natural killer cells. That's what they're actually called. Natural killer cells that go around your body and they look for bad guys and they kill them. They look for cancer cells and viruses and infections and all kinds of things. So the key is that there is a balance in life, and you know that inherently, right? If my life is balanced and I get good rest and good sleep and good food, I tend to do really well. But stress pushes us in a bad direction. Our life gets out of balance. We eat the bad things. We don't go to the gym. We don't exercise. We get overweight. We become diabetic. And now we've really opened the door for cancer. And that's what I want us to all understand. Cancer just doesn't arrive haphazardly. Yeah, there's some chance of it, right? There's some small genetic component, but the vast majority of your cancer risk is self-imposed, and that's powerful. That means we have an opportunity to control our risk, and that makes sense to you inherently. If you see somebody smoking, you would say, oh my gosh, they're really putting themselves at risk for lung cancer. Well, yeah, but other cancers that we get, hormonal-based cancers, prostate cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, are also largely based on our lifestyle. How much fiber is in your diet on a daily basis has been shown in medical study to predict your risk of colon cancer. If a woman eats trans fats and bad fats like chips and fries, we know that statistically that increases her risk for breast cancer. So our lifestyle matters dramatically in all of this. I want to make sure that I'm clear that there is the Cancer Act of 1939. And back in the day, there were charlatans and hustlers out there promising to cure your cancer with all kinds of crazy treatments. And so this Cancer Act of 1939 made it illegal to treat cancer with any modality other than surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy. Now, this concept or idea has been debated because there's many things outside of surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy that are helpful. I am not here to promote that you abandon those therapies. I'm here to suggest, first of all, that if we address our lifestyle, we never get to the point where we have to make a choice about surgery and radiation and chemotherapy. And secondly, if I have cancer and I have to get radiation or chemo or surgery, there are things outside of those modalities that can support my body's ability to repair. It can support my immune system. And ultimately, that's what gets rid of cancer. Chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery do not rid you of cancer. These are called debulking therapies. They reduce the cancer burden, but ultimately, your immune system, your killer cells, have to rise up and complete the job. And there's much that we can do in support of that. So I just want to make that clear that we're not suggesting that we avoid those therapies. But when we talk about what doctors are taught, we're taught a lot of stuff in med school, but I think the illusion for the general public is that, quote unquote, doctors know everything. No, they don't. Let me show you what we learn or what we're taught when we're in medical school. We're taught about disease of the organs, right? We're taught all about diseases. We're taught about drugs to control symptoms. Now, notice I said control symptoms, not reverse disease, because that's not what they do largely. We're taught about how to implement surgeries to alter or remove organs, and we're taught about technologies to diagnose disease, right? That sounds valuable, and it is hugely valuable. But let's look now at what medical school does not teach doctors. We're not taught anything about health. There is not a single class in your 4-year medical degree or in your residency that is health of the heart, health of the kidneys, health of the brain. That doesn't exist. And we're not taught or even encouraged to make people healthy because that's not our goal. Our goal is to identify disease and try to halt its progression. okay? We're not taught how to prevent disease, nor are we taught how to reverse a disease. For example, type 2 diabetes is one of the most problematic diagnoses in this country. It happens when people eat poorly and gain weight. It is self-induced, it's not genetic, and it is completely reversible. Yet in med school, we're not taught how to reverse it. I can take any type 2 diabetic and reverse their diabetes with lifestyle, all right? Why is that key in this talk? Because diabetes is one of the key drivers of cancer. Cancer loves sugar. Diabetes is poor control of your sugar, right? We're not taught how to reverse that. We're not taught anything about nutrition or diet. And as I've already alluded, a woman who's eating a lot of fries and chips and trans fats increases her risk for breast cancer. A woman who's eating a lot of healthy fat, avocado, coconut oil, olive oil, if she eats a lot of those fats, she reduces her risk for breast cancer. Same thing with the bowel, same thing with any cancer you can think of. Cruciferous vegetables are tremendously beneficial in reducing somebody's risk for cancer. This isn't just an idea, this has been studied. There's research in the medical library. Unfortunately, it's not shared with us as we go through our medical training. Exercise. Those that exercise have a dramatically lower risk for cancer. And as we're going to see, preventing cancer is a heck of a lot better than trying to treat cancer. Sleep is very important. We're not taught anything about that. We're taught nothing about stress management or the adrenal glands or cortisol's role in disease. We're not taught anything about lifestyles, role in disease, or ways of supporting the immune system, which I've already said. It is the immune system that protects us. Every human body has cancer cells. Not everyone will get a cancer diagnosis. What's the difference? Your body makes cancer cells on an ongoing basis, but your killer cells, when your immune system is strong, finds them and eradicates them. If you have diabetes or a high sugar diet, that weakens your immune system. If you don't sleep, that weakens your immune system. And then lastly, we're not really taught anything about techniques for detoxification, how to get rid of plastics and metals and all the toxins that are in our environment. That's important because those toxins also contribute to cancer cells. So, Dr. Ralph Moss was the director of research at Sloan Kettering, and he was fired back in 1977 because Ralph Moss, a brilliant PhD researcher, kept coming across different ways of affecting cancer that weren't chemotherapy, like Laetrile. Remember Laetrile from Peach Pits years ago was a compound that wasn't a drug that was reportedly effective against cancer. And as Ralph Moss looked into that research, he found that that was true. Sloan Kettering didn't like him doing that. They said, you learn about chemotherapy and you study chemotherapy. And they eventually fired him because Ralph Moss kept noting that there were so many other modalities like simple vitamin C that dramatically impacted cancer. His book will really shed a light on the oncology industry. And again, I'm not here to throw oncologists under the bus. They're great people. They're doing difficult work. They offer great solutions, but it's not the only solution. It's very narrow. Their scope of treatment is very narrow. Then there's a book that just came out by Dr. Raza. She is both professor and oncologist. She has held positions at the Roswell Park Cancer Institute, at Rush University in Chicago, and even our local University of Cincinnati. And she's brilliant. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that are found in her book because she is a passionate oncologist and she's begging all of us and telling us from decades of being an oncologist, we need to do a better job of preventing cancer. And that's what this is really about. Well, here's the good news, if there's any good news. 68% of all new cancers, when you catch them early, and that's why it's important to catch cancer early, can be resolved. We don't use the word cure, but we use the word resolved because it may come back. But that's a pretty good number, right? Here's the downside. That leaves 32% that if the cancer has left the primary organ, if it's metastasized, we don't do a great job in the medical community. We try and we go after it. But the reality of it is you don't have a great chance of survival if your cancer is metastasized. We may prolong life a little bit, but it's a pretty grim result. There is a number called the age-adjusted mortality. That means for your age, what are the odds of you dying from any specific cancer at any specific age? And guess what? That number has not improved even 1% since 1930, despite spending $500 billion in research and drug development. And that's kind of scary. We haven't improved cancer care 1% in 90 years. And now people would say, wait a minute, there's better chemotherapies and people are living longer. Minimally. So when we begin to look at drug therapy, chemotherapy, here are some scary numbers regarding chemotherapy. First of all, 95% of all experimental agents fail completely. In the lab, as we're trying to develop new chemotherapy agents, we're testing it against odd cancer strains that are maintained in petri dishes, and these are different than the cancer that grows in your body. They alter over time. So 95% of our efforts to find a magical cure fail. 5% that do succeed only end up working in about 25% of patients. That's not a big number. And even when it does work in that small 25% of patients, it typically only extends life a few months. For example, new drug is developed, we have this great new therapy, but it doesn't get rid of your cancer. It doesn't cure your cancer, but you might get 2 or 3 more months of life, okay? That's not really exciting, is it? That's a lot of money and a lot of failure for a few months of life. When we look at those kinds of numbers and it gets bleak, again, the message in this video, the best solution is don't get cancer, prevent it. Well, of course, we all want to avoid cancer, but how do we prevent it? What are we doing to prevent it? Well, if we look at cancer research and the money spent, look at these numbers. $12 billion are spent yearly, 6 of it by the National Health Institute and 6 billion in private industry, trying to research and find that magic bullet. Why? There's good money in chemotherapy. Only 4% of our research dollars are being spent on identifying ways to prevent cancer. And as I said, if we catch it early, 68% chance of getting rid of it. And if we never get it, the odds are even better. So 96% of $12 billion spent yearly on research is spent on drug research. Why do we think that is? Because drugs make a lot of money. And here's the other downside of that. 42% of people, and this is in Dr. Roz's book, but 42% of people with advanced cancer, that's cancer that is spread from the primary organ and metastasized, as they pursue radiation and chemo and surgery, as they should, will bankrupt the entire family trying to treat that one individual. And this is what comes under scrutiny. At what cost? What are we spending? How is this efficient if we're bankrupting 42% of people with metastatic cancer with the very treatments that we're trying to give them? There has to be a better way. So as I move forward in this morning's discussion, I'm going to introduce you to Mick. I want him to tell you his story because it's interesting and compelling, and he is going to be the biggest voice on the planet about prevention. All right, let's meet Mick.
Well, hello to part one, which is actually part two.
Part two.
So Mick and I got together a couple weeks ago, and we talked about your case, and it's such an interesting one. But this is really part one. We're going to get into your, and I'm going to let him do all the talking. You've heard me yammer on many years, too long, too much. Mick came to me with appendiceal cancer and some challenges as far as getting his doctors to treat it, and I'm going to let you lay all that out. But here's why you might find this very interesting. You are cancer-free.
Yes.
This past June, you had a PET scan.
Yes.
Which is a scan looking at your entire body for any cancer cells, and they found none.
None.
And was it 8 months prior to that you were diagnosed, or in that ballpark, 9 months?
No, it was probably, it's just 2017 when I was, end of 2017 when I was diagnosed.
Okay, so it has been longer.
Right.
So listen, here's the summary. This guy is cancer-free. He's lost 80 pounds. He used a lot of lifestyle change, self-driven directional change. I got to play a part in that, but you are the driver of most of that change. And he's going to detail the story. Why? This is important to all of us. We are all at risk for cancer. We're all at risk for diabetes and weight gain. Why? Because of our culture and the foods and everything around us. And Mick doesn't hold the secret because there isn't one secret.
No.
But what you do represent for a lot of people is that ideology that I get to control what this body does. And the biggest thing that impresses me, and it has impressed me about you, I know as folks over the years, is you represent one of those guys that said, oh, this is the way it is. That's not good enough. I need to make a change. And the biggest thing that the people watching this are going to get from you is what had to happen between the years for you to go, this isn't working for me. So with that,
Okay.
tell me go back to 2017 and you're having a nice day and suddenly you get some bad news.
Yeah, I was supposed to go in for my post-op visit for the surgery once they removed the appendix on a Friday.
You had some belly pain. I think were you on vacation or down in Florida?
I kind of, this whole thing started off, I even asked the doctors about it and they were kind of baffled by this, but probably 6 months prior to my appendix exploding, I started feeling real sluggish.
Okay.
And not well at all. And I started having belly problems more than ever. And I had no clue that it was my appendix, of course, till it moved to the right side. And boom,
and you
there
just
it was.
you went into like an urgent care, or you went right
I
to
went
the
right
ER?
I went right to the ER, checked in.
And just said, I have belly pain. And you're thinking they're going to say, oh, you've got gastroenteritis or some crazy little whatever.
And I had no clue. I collapsed right there in the ER. And they picked me up, put me on the gurney. And next thing I know, I woke up out of surgery with a bag on my side. So they told me that the appendix had exploded very bad. They couldn't take it out because of the severity of the blow through another CAT scan. So I had to wait for an additional 30 days and to be able to even get that out of there.
And at that time, no knowledge that it's cancer.
No,
just,
no,
hey, your
absolutely not.
appendix ruptured. We took it out.
Right.
Or we put a drain on it.
Exactly.
So then comes the news.
Yeah. Then the night before, my doctor calls. And I'm like, wait a minute, doctors don't call at nighttime, when my appointment's tomorrow morning. He's like, well, I'm not going to be there. And I got some bad news. And that's when they dropped the ball on me and told me that I had a very fast and fast-growing, fast-moving type of cancer. Very rare type of cancer, but very fast-moving. And they immediately wanted to do an over $1 million surgery on me to take out half my intestines, to take out fatty tissue, lymph nodes in that general area.
And it had to happen right now.
Right now. They said if I didn't do it, that it would spread. And if it got into my lymph nodes, my body, it would spread and I would die. Period. Yeah. So, wow, that's a hell of a phone call to take on a Thursday night, So, of course, I walked around kind of funny, and then
it gets in your head.
It does. It gets in your head so bad, and it's like the days prior to that seemed to be okay because I was starting to feel a little bit better. But then this happens, and I go right back to square one, and it was all because of what happened with my head. You tell somebody you've got cancer, and that word is the devil.
It's directly linked to death. And horror,
everything. And everything you hear is just so bad. So I had to go see this surgeon, and he wanted to do the surgery immediately. So I said okay, and I don't have a choice. So what we did was he went ahead and booked a date, and then the insurance company called and said that they weren't going to approve my claim. So,
any idea why? I mean, you told me this before, and I never.
I don't understand. They knew that they did the biopsy on my appendix, and they knew that it was cancer. I mean, the doctor told me one of two things happens with an appendix: either you get a piece of poop lodged in there, or you a cancer will start to grow, and what happens is the cancer continues to grow until it bursts the appendix. So, which I had no clue. Yeah. Right. So, I don't understand that. So, the insurance company's got the proof from the doctors and everything of all this stuff that's gone through, and they don't want to approve it. Maybe, I don't know if it was because of the cost.
They didn't want to approve the surgery, which was their immediate first necessary, got to do it today intervention.
Correct. I mean, they're like, if you don't do this, you're going to die.
Right.
So I fought with the insurance company, and it just came down to what they called a self-pay. And I said, what does that mean? And I talked to the administrators of the hospital, and they said, what that mean? Your out-of-pocket expense for your recovery in the hospital is $800,000. So I just decided that
which begs the question: why don't I have insurance?
And why exactly? And and for the people that are out there that are going through the same thing, it just to let you know, they're like Doc is going, tells you, and I'm going to say the same thing: is that there are ways natural ways to cure yourself. You just have to you have to believe in something. I mean, at that point, when everybody lets you down, you're scared.
And the surgeon's saying you need this.
Yeah.
You just say, okay, where do I sign? And by the way, let's just cover that briefly. So in our culture, in this country, it is illegal to treat cancer with anything other than surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation. That's the Cancer Act of 1919, I think the year was, 1939. Anyways, so again, this video is not to say if you have cancer, don't have surgery, don't have chemo. It's to say that that's what we offer in traditional medicine. But it is not the only thing that can be of benefit. In our practice, we don't proclaim to treat cancer. When you came to me with this and said, hey, they're not going to do my surgery, or I have this and this, I said to you, we can do a lot to promote your immune system. We can do a lot to promote your health. But I recommend that you talk to your surgeon, talk to your oncologist, follow their game plan. But when that didn't pan out, we turned to other alternatives.
Well, and just a real quick 2 minutes on the oncologist. I got to go to an oncologist, and I walked into this office, and it actually was a working environment for chemotherapy.
Yeah.
So there are people crawling on the floor. There are people laying there crying. There's people that are being sick in garbage cans. And she's taking my blood pressure, and she looks at me and she goes, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm not okay. And she goes, is your blood pressure normally as high? And I'm like, absolutely not. And she's like, what do you think it is? I said, look at this. I don't belong here.
Yeah.
I said, no, this is not for me.
If you've never been where they're giving chemotherapy, you're right. It's
scary.
It's very scary. And these people look really sick.
Yes.
And you wonder if some of them are going to make it out of the door. And you're thinking to yourself, what the hell am I doing here?
Exactly.
And what greets you at the desk when you first walk in?
Well, the only good thing about the insurance policy was it only cost me $70 to get out of there.
So you go in to talk to your oncologist about chemo.
Right. And they told me that she was really funny. She's probably about 5 foot tall Asian lady. She was really nice in the beginning, but she says, you got to have chemotherapy. And I said, no. So she started hitting on me, my shoulder, like, you got to have chemo now. Really? You don't get it, you die.
And why were you saying no to chemo, given that surgery really didn't look like a tenable option?
I walked in that room, and like I said, my blood pressure was through the roof, and I was not happy until I was in my car outside that building.
But there's more to that story, and you shared this with me. I just want to flesh it out.
Right.
You didn't just initially say no. You went and researched it, and you found out there was a form of chemotherapy called HIPEC,
right,
which is where they take the chemo and they infuse it into the intestinal cavity.
Correct.
And it's actually heated, which increases its permeability into the gut. And this kind of chemo is less toxic. They can use lower dose. It isn't systemic. And it seems to have a better cure rate.
And that's what they wanted to do. As a matter of fact, we even had a person that was going to donate the money for the chemotherapy drug to be used in that HIPEC procedure. And as you know, I'll let you finish.
But the insurance wouldn't cover it.
No.
Which is why you had to try to find private funding.
Correct.
And even after you found private funding, and I talked to them about where do we get the materials, tell me the dose, let's get this engaged, we couldn't engage it.
No.
And I can't even remember what the holdup was. The oncology, the fact that we were painting outside the lines and trying to do HIPEC, because your insurance only wanted to cover the IV form.
Correct.
Which is much more toxic, and you found that unacceptable. And I don't disagree with you.
No,
the HIPEC would have been a much better option. Insurance wouldn't pay for it, and even when we found a benefactor that would cover the cost, they weren't willing or able to engage it outside of the traditional model.
Correct.
So we feel like our back's against the wall. We can't get surgery. We can't get chemo.
Well, I did what most people do when they have their back against the wall. Once you calm down and you got to wrap your head around something, I started on the internet.
Dr. Google?
Dr. Google. And, of course, I've been going to Dr. Huber, during this part now, and so it was very, very challenging, to say the least, because I started getting online and I'm just doing my own research, just starting off about cancer and the kind of things that fuel cancer and that kind of stuff. And of course, there's a lot of stuff out there that you can read that just scares the bejeebies out of you. Yep. But I mean, I like to dig and dwell and look for fact. And what I was finding out was that there were other things that you could do other than traditional methods in order to feel better. So the first thing I did was I ordered a DVD, which came free, and all this about cancer. So it gave me.
Was that from Ralph Moss?
You know what? I can't remember. It's
Okay.
but that's what really got me started. It was called. I know which one it was called. I don't know if it was on him or not, but it was it's called Cancer: A Global Quest.
Okay.
And it's on the internet, and they sent, you can download the first one for free, and it talks about cancer and how people didn't use traditional methods and how they worked, and they used personalized medicine along with diet and exercise in order to achieve the same goal.
And before we paint a picture that medicine is evil, which I'm not trying to paint, that's not our goal in being here today. We're
correct.
sharing the success of your story.
Right.
We have to understand that years ago with that Cancer Act, what the medical community was trying to do is stop charlatans from posting miraculous cures with things that were garbage. Okay, so it was done with a good intent, that we really think chemo and radiation and surgery are the best options. But in an effort to protect people from charlatans, they also pretty much outlawed, banished, and smashed anybody that had a realistic option that was working. And there are a lot of outside the traditional lines modalities that really defeat cancer's ability to grow and proliferate. There's a lot of things that you and I do that feed cancer, like eating too many carbs and sugars. So it was a good intention, but there have been, and there always have been, and there always will be, things outside of radiation and surgery and chemotherapy that help reduce cancer's ability to grow, or things that support your immune system.
Correct.
Here's the challenge. When we go to med school, we're not taught any of that. We're not taught anything about nutrition. We're taught nothing about exercise or stress or sleep or health. We're taught only disease, and we're taught only what drugs and surgeries cure which diseases. That has tremendous value. There are people that are diagnosed with cancer and they go surgically have that breast lump removed, and that's the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And they do awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that technology has value. But if we're going to look at the downside to it, where it's weak is, it doesn't help patients promote their own health,
Correct.
Support their own immune system, or do things that weaken the cancer that aren't chemotherapy. So having made that public service announcement,
yeah.
we're not throwing anybody under the bus, but so you decide you're going to go do some research, and you're looking, and you find some things regarding diet, and you start making some change.
Correct.
And at the time, you weren't the sleek, slender, athletic build that you are right now.
No,
you had a
not
few
at all.
lbs on you.
I really did, and it wasn't, believe it or not, in my lifetime, I've always been active. I've always been into sports, and
Jesus Christ. Fuck. I swear
thank
to
God for editing abilities.
Yeah, thank God for editing.
We're not going to.
Mick.
You're not going to be a setup man.
No.
That was funny.
Yeah. I've already screwed this up once.
That's all right. They say 3 times the charm, so.
Yeah, you can tell this is a high-tech operation.
It is. I think you're going to develop a new clamp for that.
Oh yeah,
that design. Yeah, I think you are.
We'll be working on this later on this afternoon when we get done here. All right. Theoretically, that's relatively the same.
Correct.
We'll see. We'll find out. Anyhow, get my microphone out of my pocket. All right, so go ahead. I don't know where we were.
I don't either. So I think basically what Dr. Huber is definitely saying.
We were talking about your weight.
Correct.
And at the time, you were carrying more weight than you wanted. You were always very active and
sports.
Athletic.
Yeah, I was. And all of a sudden, I would diet. And, of course, now we're going back a number of years. And, of course, we all know how many fad diets and all the other stuff there have been over decades.
Sure.
Okay, so I probably tried them all.
Yeah.
And nothing worked. And then, of course, when I came to you and you got me going with what I needed to get my system going. And then you got me with a nutritionist and explained to me how to eat through the ketogenic diet.
And we're going to get in part 2. We're not going to get into it too deep today. We can hit on it.
Right.
But we're going to get into it part 2, how you lost 80 pounds and doing a ketogenic diet. So tune into part 2 to hear more about that. But go ahead for now. So we started talking about diet. You made some changes.
Yeah, I had to. I mean, you know, a thing I don't think I've really said yet is through all this, just to take a second to let people take a breath, is the fact, if you go through anything like this, and if you are going through anything like this, or a friend's going through anything like this, the hardest thing about this entire thing is getting your head wrapped around it. You have to.
Yeah.
And I was given no choice, okay? And basically it was like, well, if you're not going to do this, you're going to die. So I didn't hear, and I said, I'm a tough guy. And I said, there's no way. You know, I'm going to do what I have to do, and there's not going to tell me I'm going to die. I'm going to survive.
But I agree with you. Take a breath, and that is hard. Somebody comes at you and goes, hey, boom, you got cancer. And it doesn't matter if it's the most benign cancer in the world. That world smacks you between the eyes.
It does.
And it changes your perspective on everything. And in an effort, I think, the medical community, in an effort to not overpromise or give false hope, they sometimes go the other way, and they paint such a bleak picture that you feel like you're lucky if you make it through this. But that's critical, because what we believe and what we think affects our immune system.
Oh.
The decision we make to either not eat that bowl of ice cream and have that salad, well, screw it. If I'm going to die anyways, I might as well have the ice cream.
Well, if that's the way you want to look at it.
So it's not a small point that you're making. It's a big, big, big point.
No, it is
your mindset.
It is. It's a big point, you know, and once you get your head wrapped around it, you've got to believe in it, and you got to stick with it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big thing, is you have to, through all of this, if you would come up to a situation like me where the insurance company either A, won't pay for it, or B, you know, they're like, well, you know, we can do chemo, but we can't do surgery. If you've got a situation, you know, hey, it's up to you.
Yep.
You know, I believe that God all gave us a good mind, you know, to use it to our benefit. And that's and I believe that that's really important.
What was the toughest part as you realize, okay, wait a minute, these are the biggest options, chemo, surgery, and they're really not great options? You know, what was the mindset at that point? I got to take this on. I have to make change, but that's still a big ask. What was there, any one or two things that allowed you to say, all right, did you just pull up your bootstraps and say, we're in it to win it? What was going through your head that allowed you to make that transition when others don't?
Well, okay, I have a little bit of different background. I know that Dr. Huber knows this for me, but I was a cross-trained firefighter EMS for 14 years. And you name it, I've seen it. And, you know, a lot of it had to do with death. And I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. I know what it smells like. And I don't like any part of it.
Yeah.
And that was my driving factor, was the fact that, you know, I've seen it. I know what it's like. And as a matter of fact, it was the hardest part for me was having to go to the morgue. Okay? None of us get out of this game alive. Okay? None of us. But it's what we do between now and then and try to live a good life.
Yeah.
You know? And the thing about it is, now I think my head was really messed up back then, but I had to wrap around something, and that's what I did. I said, I'm going to live. I don't care what it takes, but I'm going to survive. And once I got past that part, it wasn't easy. Yeah. But I had a direction.
You made a big change in the diet. So we went on to the ketogenic diet, which is a high-fat diet. Why? Because scientifically, we know that cancer loves sugar. Cancer loves carbs. If you want to make your cancer happy and grow, feed it carbs, feed it sugar, feed it bread and pasta. And if you really want to upset it, give it fat. It can't use fat for fuel. You can. Your brain can. Your muscles can use fat for fuel, but cancer can't.
That's right.
And so you made that big transition to start doing a ketogenic diet, which is high fat. And of course, some people are going to say, wait a minute, if you ate high fat, you increase your risk for heart disease.
Well, and that's, here's another, no, and there's another thing out there, and we can all agree on, they play the label game. So anything that's low in fat is high in sugar. Okay, so everything that they were telling me in the beginning, not you, everything that these other doctors I was going to were telling me to do all this, you know, you got to do low fat, this, low fat, and I started reading everything. I'm like, oh my God, there's double the carbs and double the sugar.
That's how you take out the fat. You got to put in something, so we put in carbs. When you went to that oncology office, What was sitting at the reception's desk? Usually, I've seen this in every oncology office that I've ever been to. It's either a bowl of candy or a bowl of crackers.
Oh, no kidding. You know what I did? I think I was so shook.
I've seen this, and here's the idea in medicine. Oh, you know, this chemo is going to make you lose weight. We need you to eat. Just eat whatever. We don't care. Just eat calories because you're going to lose weight, and that's bad.
Crazy.
And literally in most of these chemo departments, they've got bowls of candy laying around so that you have something to eat, and you're having a rough day, so here's a Snickers bar.
Wow.
And it's unfortunate because that's the very thing that feeds cancer, and we really don't educate. I have had oncologists tell patients, now don't you eat too many vegetables, because vegetables are an antioxidant, and I'm giving you oxidative chemotherapy to kill the cancer, and if you eat vegetables, that'll block my drug. And that's never been shown in study.
Wow.
In fact, cancer cells can't even absorb antioxidants, right, other than vitamin C, and vitamin C is toxic to cancer cells. So look, the oncologists, they're smart, they're trying, they know a lot about chemotherapy, but in medicine, none of us were ever given a fighting chance because we were never taught anything about nutrition.
No.
So going into a ketogenic framework, number one, you're going to burn fat as calories. Hey, I'm getting smaller. And you lost that 80 pounds over a year?
Oh, I'd say probably a year and a half.
Year and a half?
About a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was natural for me because my body was still recovering from a major shock.
Mm-hmm.
And I was probably, man, after that, my surgery, I'd say it was probably at least 6-8 months before I felt like myself again.
Okay.
And
yeah, it's a trauma.
Yeah, it is a trauma, and it's really hard. And plus, what I forgot to say is I had a failed bag that was on me the first time, so I ended up having to go back to the hospital, get septic all over again. So actually 3 times I was totally septic.
Mm-hmm.
I had all these CAT scans. They put all these drugs in me. And I have, found out I was allergic to morphine, and they were pumping me full of that stuff. And when your body, that takes a toll on your body. Yeah. And when you get out, it took me time to get better. So the reason it took me a little bit longer to get the weight off is I was exercising, but I wasn't beating myself up.
Yeah, you didn't.
I had to take one thing at a time. Yeah, because I know how it can be. Doctors look at you and say, hey, you got to do this, 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 and this. And then they're like, man, you feel like you just got shot 5 times. Bam, 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 bam. Right?
Yeah.
And, I got to do all this immediately. And once again, that's really hard to wrap your head around. Mm-hmm. Okay, you do find a solution. Mm-hmm. Okay, then you got to wrap your head around, how am I going to work with this to get to this solution?
Yeah.
Right? So it was challenging in the beginning, but like I said, the great part about it is I had help here at Dr. Huber's office. Any questions I had, and once a nutritionist taught me how to eat and what to look for and read labels and all that stuff. I mean, it actually became more of a fun challenge than it was a agonistic, experience.
And a prison sentence.
Thank you.
And it's the accountability part too, and I think that's where Chelsea really helps folks. Anybody can say, oh, well, here's what I want you to eat. Just eat this diet. Okay. But it's the how. It's the, okay, start here, now make this step and then this step, and the accountability, keeping people on track.
Correct.
It was amazing to watch your journey. It was amazing to watch you shrink every time I saw you. And in my head, I'm going, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please. Because I kept waiting for the shoe to drop. Hey, we got a call from Mick. He's back in the hospital. And that call never came. And then one day you walked in, you were out front picking up something. I just happened to be walking out and saw you.
Yep.
And you looked at me and you said, my PET scan is completely negative.
Sir.
And that was the happiest day of this year.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, that's the best thing that's ever happened in 2020. Yeah. That's all I can say.
So again, you continue to be that bright light, and you always be that bright light because you're very well spoken. You are a model of what can be accomplished when you put your mind to it.
Thank you.
We are going to, at the next video, which was what we recorded 2 weeks ago, we're going to talk about what you did with keto and with weight loss. So we won't dwell on that more. But before we close this out, any other thoughts? Somebody out there struggling right now, they just went through the doctor. They said you got prostate, colon, breast cancer, and they're still scared and a little bit nervous. And yes, you should do what your oncologist says and your surgeon says. You should listen to them and take their advice. But beyond that,
you got to breathe. You've got to breathe, because I think when they did, I get upset or nervous. I have a tendency not to breathe. It's like, you got to breathe. You're going to pass out. So you got to take a deep breath. This is all. If that has happened to you and you're in this situation, you really need to take some time for yourself. You need to think about what's going on. Don't worry about anybody or anything except yourself. This is something that you have to.
It's
this
time
is
to
a
be
battle.
a little selfish.
Yeah, you have to be. This is a personal battle. You know, anybody can come in and comfort you and all that, and that's wonderful.
Yep.
You know, but the thing is that I was striving for self-motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Once I took a little time for myself, I'm like, all right, I get this, you know, and I'm a survivor, okay, and I'm a fighter. I'm not that kind of a type that's just going to roll over. So, you know, like I said, in the beginning, everything is difficult, and we always have to remember it's always the darkest before the dawn, okay, and you know, there is light at the end of the tunnel if you do the correct things.
If you decide you can take control.
Amen.
And I think that's the
biggest,
big thing, is
yes.
recognizing you get to take control. Stop being a victim. Stop contributing to your own demise. Stop listening to everybody, and you decide what feels right.
Correct.
And if you believe you can beat cancer, you can. If you believe you can reverse diabetes, you can. It all starts up here. And just don't be that victim.